Good morning, guys. We are coming at you today with Q&A because we've been getting really backed up with all of your questions. And there's not a whole lot of fun things going on aboard Freedom these days. So we're taking the easy route this week, answering all of your questions, and we're also going to share what our upcoming cruising plans are for 2021, at least that we know right now. So if you haven't already, grab yourself a cup of coffee and we will see you in a few minutes. Okay, first question this week comes from Paul and Alicia from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. How do you handle water purification? I noticed you pickle your water maker for the winter, so since you rely on city water fill-ups now, how do you assure your water meets drinking water standards? Do you use solutions, UV filtration, etc., or do you rely on bottled water for drinking and cooking?
So no, we use the water from the dock. The water that feeds the dock is the same city water that feeds all of the homes around here. So the water is perfectly safe for drinking. So that goes right into our tank and we use it. There is one additional step that we do though. We have a water softener, and that softener has a pre-filter. So I think the pre-filter might be 5 or 10 microns, so it'll pull out any large contaminants, and then the softener just provides some softness to the water. But other than that, the water is perfectly safe for drinking right out of the hose bib at the dock.
Yep, and we do not ever use bottled water. We got our Brita water filter, so we also use that. So we put the water into a Brita water filter that fits really nicely into our fridge, which has been awesome, so we don't have to buy plastic bottles. Next question is from Tom Tinker in Tacoma, Washington. Why don't you like tying to mooring buoys? Great question. We don't like mooring buoys that much because we don't quite know how well they're maintained, and we don't always necessarily know how much weight they're good for. We have a 60,000 pound boat. Most mooring buoys say they can hold a boat 45 feet or less, but a lot of 45-foot boats don't necessarily weigh 60,000 pounds. And there's a lot of barnacle growth that you'll see on mooring buoys or mooring balls at anchorages, and we don't like knowing that in calm anchorages our boat can be knocking up against the mooring buoy with barnacles. So that's why we prefer to anchor. The next two questions are they're similar. Angela from Kenmore, Washington, and Dan from Seattle, so both locals. It's about our boat name. So Angela asks, how did you choose your boat name? Did you rename it from its original christened name? Any special procedure to ensure good juju? Never heard that word before. And how did you settle on a name for your boat? And what is MV from Dan? So our boat name, when we sat down and talked about the boat name before we officially owned it, when we knew we were getting Freedom, Freedom her original name was Endurance, and neither one of us really liked that name. So we just kind of brainstormed one afternoon and kind of came up with names. And the first thing that I thought of was Freedom, because that's what the boat means to us. It's a trawler that can cross an ocean. It can get us long distances and take us almost anywhere in the world within reason. So Freedom was the first thing that came to my mind. I don't remember what you had said or what names you had, but I remember Sean wasn't in love with Freedom. He was like, let's keep thinking about it.
I liked Freedom. I did want just a single word. I didn't want it to be multiple words, just so that way it's easier to call on the radio, and I think it just seemed a little bit cleaner. And to be fair, Endurance is a good name for a Nordhaven, just because they all have obviously long range capability.
Yeah, but what sealed the deal was I was watching a YouTube interview with Cindy Crawford, who I loved as a kid, and it was a 60-second answer all these questions in 60 seconds. And one of the questions they asked her was, if you had a boat, what would you name it? And she said Freedom, and I said, boom, that's a sign. We're naming Endurance Freedom. And there we go. We didn't do anything weird or anything special to christen it. I know there's people out there that think it's bad luck to change the name, or you need to do a ceremony to put the name on. We didn't do anything like that. We just, hope that we have good luck. And also, Dan, MV stands for motor vessel, and we took that because SV Delos was one of the first channels that really inspired us to do what we're doing. So we thought that was kind of cool that they have sailing vessel Delos, so we figured we'll do MV Freedom.
That's why we did that.
Yeah. That's why we did that.
Oh, okay.
We were MV Orca and then MV Freedom. Okay, anyway, moving on. Okay, Bill Quigley. We don't know where Bill's from. How do stabilizers work? And full displacement hull, what does that mean? Why don't you take that one?
Yeah, so a full displacement hull, first of all, what that means is the boat doesn't like get up on plane like a faster semi-displacement boat or like a ski boat. So the boat always stays at the same attitude, whether it's not moving or whether it's at its full speed. So another example of a full displacement boat would be a sailing vessel. Sailing vessels don't get up on plane. So there's a limited hull speed that you can get before you start pushing too big of a bow wave. So the boat can only go so fast. So it's a comfortable ride because there's a lot of hull in the water, and it's capable of traveling very efficiently because you're not using a ton of fuel to try to push the boat up on top of the water. And regarding how our stabilizers work, we have a sensor that measures how much roll the boat is experiencing. And then depending on how much roll there is in the boat, and roll is side to side, pitching is fore and aft, stabilizers only take care of the roll. They really do nothing for the pitch. But what they do is they counteract that roll. So the sensor detects roll to one side or the other, and then there's two fins that stick out of the bottom of our boat on either side. And the fins are pretty large. They're about almost 3 feet by 3 feet square, and they're driven by hydraulic rams, so they can pivot. And when one side of the boat rolls down, that fin is like an airplane wing, and it kind of counteracts that roll and creates lift on that side of the boat to try to keep the boat as neutral as possible. And they really do an excellent job at eliminating the roll.
Yep. And we'll kind of come back to that in a little bit with some other questions about why we chose Freedom over some other boats that we were looking at. Okay, next question is from Tyson Records in Gig Harbor, Washington. If you were to have your nieces for the whole summer and time was not a restriction, where are the top places you would take them? So we have 3 nieces. They're not teenagers yet. They're all pretty young. And this was a tough one because at first we thought, well, it depends on if the border's open. Where in Canada will we take them? Because we always prefer Canada. But then in thinking of their age, really every place we cruise to in the Puget Sound is a perfect spot for a kid. So I think, to be really specific, if they came, we would start by taking them on like a tour of Seattle. So we would take them in through the locks, have them explore the lakes, go to Andrews Bay in Lake Washington where the water's really warm in the summer, do a hot tub boat trip on Lake Union, maybe if the ducks are still running, take them on a ducks tour, and then go to Bell Harbor where we could take them to the market and show them Seattle. And then places like Blake Island where you can camp and walk right up to deer. Places that have pools. So the Alderbrook is one of our favorites. I think kids would love the Alderbrook. Obviously the San Juans, we would probably spend a good chunk of time up there, especially Roche Harbor because there's also a pool. It's so safe. There's a ton to do in the summer. There's so many kids up there, so they wouldn't feel like they're around a bunch of old boaters. And Rosario has a pool. There's a lot of great places for kids in the San Juans. Would you add to that?
I think the only thing we would do if we had children on board and we were doing some cruising is we would try to pick a lot of places that are nearby. I think that going on a long day worth of travel might be something that's monotonous or boring to a child. So we would just keep a lot of our destinations close.
And that's why I kind of ruled out British Columbia because all the cool places that we love, it's a day to get there, or at least a half a day, and I think our nieces would go nuts on the boat. Yeah. Okay, next up is James from Fort Smith, Northwest Territories up in Canada. And this is similar to Wendy's question from Florida. You seem to have a great relationship between the two of you. What do you do to cope well with one another living in such a confined space? Whatever you're doing, it seems to work for you. And Wendy's question was, how do you both get along without arguing? Well, Sean travels a lot for his job, but in all seriousness, when I think back to 2020, we spent a ton of time together and did great. And I didn't even think about it until months later. I was like, wow, we've been in 400 square feet and we still like each other.
I think what it boils down to is I'm like super easy to live with, and because I'm so easy to live with, I can put up with anything that Elizabeth has to throw my way. So it makes it easy, right?
Yeah, we are pretty different that way. Like Sean's really even keeled. I'm usually more of the feisty one, and we balance each other out that way. But also, we're really easy people, and we're total goonies. Like we're total kids at heart, and we don't take a ton of stuff seriously. To the point where we're going to argue with each other. And I don't know. I kind of live every day knowing that like tomorrow either one of us could get diagnosed with cancer, and any fighting we would do would be like such a waste of time. So we kind of live like that and get along. And when you're living on a boat, we feel so fortunate to be living on our boat right now. Like if we're ever in a crabby mood, one of us reminds the other, like, you don't have much to complain about, or we don't have much to argue about. Get over it.
Yeah, stay calm, keep smiling, have fun.
Yeah, go boating. Okay, Dan from Edgerton, Wisconsin. While your cruising time in the Great Lakes, where were your favorite anchorages/ports?
So the Great Lakes unfortunately doesn't have a lot of great anchorages. We most often stayed in ports while traveling around the Great Lakes, unless you go up into like the North Channel. But most of our boating experience was on Lake Michigan, and our favorite places were either Door County on the Wisconsin side, or we really enjoyed traveling over to the Michigan side. The Wisconsin side has a lot of bluff and rock shorelines, whereas Michigan has a lot of sandy beaches, and a lot of the ports go into inland lakes where the water is warm and there's lots of sand. So we enjoyed the Michigan shoreline and anything north of, say, like Frankfurt. So we liked Frankfurt, we liked Charlevoix, we liked Leland.
Yeah.
So those were some of our favorite ports, and then Door County on the Wisconsin side.
Yeah. Once you go Michigan, though, it's hard to go back. Like, when we crossed Lake Michigan for the first time, we were like, we're never going to go back anywhere on the Wisconsin side. Michigan side is where it's at. Okay, Lacey from Langley, Washington. What made you change from a Carver to a Sea Ray?
Both good boats, however, like totally different. So the Carver was like a floating condo. Had really good cabin space, a good boat to live on. However, didn't have the performance like our Sea Ray did. We wanted to travel further. We wanted to get out of a gas powered boat and get into diesel. When you get into a larger boat, quite honestly, I don't think I'd ever purchase another gas powered boat again, unless it was, something that had outboards on it. Diesel was just so much more efficient, had the torque and power to go through different sea states at different RPM settings. So for us, it was wanting to travel further and get a boat that maybe performed a little bit better. The Sea Ray was easy. It was easy to dock. It had bow and stern thrusters, the big diesel engines. The other thing is in the Carver, the only place you could drive from was up on the flybridge. When you were driving up there, if there were guests or anybody down below, you just felt kind of disjointed from them. There wasn't heat or air conditioning up in the flybridge, so for us wanting to travel more in the winter, the Sea Ray worked out better because we had cockpit heat and air, so it was just a little bit more comfortable for year-round cruising here.
And then Sam Davis from Duxbury, Massachusetts. Did you consider other trawler manufacturers before purchasing the Nordhaven? If so, what boats?
We did. We considered quite a few different boats. We tried to decide if we thought we were going to be more coastal cruisers or if we want the ability to cross oceans. So some of our trawler searches considered semi-displacement trawlers, kind of like American tugs and Nordic tugs. And then more on the full displacement side, our considerations were really between Celine and Nordhaven.
Towards the end.
Yeah, we peeked at a few Katie Krogans, but that didn't seem like something we were all that interested in. And towards the end, we're like, we wanted to buy a boat that was reliable, that had the ability for us to do whatever our plans decided in the future. So if we wanted to cross an ocean, I think we would have been disappointed if we would have bought a semi-displacement boat and not have had the ability to do that. The Nordhaven's just built like a tank. We don't feel bad for putting hours on the boat. You can't abuse it. It's built like a commercial vessel, and that's what we really liked about the Nordhaven. Also, the final thing is the Nordhavens are the best equipped boat kind of right out of the gate. You're really not going to find one that doesn't have options like stabilization, wing engines. Those start to become features that are options on the other brands of boats, so it becomes more difficult to find a boat that's equipped with everything that you want right out of the gate.
Yeah, and that goes back to stabilization. When we were looking, we had a price range in mind that we didn't want to go over. And as we kept looking at boats, especially Celine's, because at the last year and a half, we really narrowed it down to Celine's. And I was in love with the Celine 47 because the interior was beautiful. But we kept finding that, sure, it was less expensive than Freedom, but it didn't have stabilization. We would always find the right boat, but it didn't have stabilization. And we always kept coming back to, like, if we were to jump into something now because it's less expensive and it feels better from a price standpoint, we know we're going to regret it, and 2 or 3 years from now we're going to sell it and lose our butt and end up with a Nordhaven anyway. And we ended up going a little bit more to know that we had what we really wanted, because Nordhaven's always been that North Star boat for us.
We wouldn't buy a full displacement boat that wasn't stabilized. In a semi-displacement boat, it's not important. The boat gets up on the water and, the hull can kind of overcome the sea state and provide stabilization. But when you're going 7 knots and the boat's floating around like a bobber, anything that you can do to make your ride more comfortable, because you are going to be at sea for a really long time, is well worth it.
Yep. Okay, Wade from Portland, Oregon. Do you guys ever fish or crab? And what kind of health insurance do you need to be at least partially covered almost anywhere? So we currently do not fish, but we are, one of my goals, I guess, for this coming year is to try to learn how to fish. We do crab, although we haven't crabbed in a few years, but I think this summer we're going to get back into crabbing. And we stopped because it was just kind of a pain. We didn't have the big pot for it. They were getting kind of stinky on the boat when we were cooking them in the pot we had. So it's a ton of fun, and we'll probably do that this summer. And then about insurance, right now we have insurance, like typical insurance through Sean's work, since he's still working full time. But that is something we are going to start investigating more in thinking of future cruising plans. Like, what do we actually need to have if we're going to be going to different countries? So I would ask you guys if you have really good recommendations or have done this before and you've gotten some kind of like international health insurance, or you've done whatever that has worked, let us know, because we would love to know. Glenn from Melbourne, Australia. Regarding your dehumidifier, would you ever consider storing the water to use for chain or deck washing? Also, would you consider putting a couple of solar panels on the wheelhouse roof?
Yeah, so for the dehumidifier, our dehumidifier doesn't collect water in a bucket like a typical refrigerant style dehumidifier. So there's actually an exhaust line that goes outside of our boat, and the water that's being expelled from the air is actually atomized in the exhaust air, and it just comes out of the boat as humid air. So there's no way to really collect it or capture the water. But interesting question. And then regarding solar panels, we have nothing against solar panels and would certainly consider them. However, there's a lot of other projects that we would rank higher than that we want to spend our money on first. And that would be like setting up a larger battery bank with lithium, and then setting up a much higher charging capacity on our boat so we could charge that battery bank very quickly. So solar, you just can't capture a ton of energy, and we have a fair amount of square footage on top of our pilot house roof, but not enough to set up 1,000 watts of solar or more. So for us, it just ranks pretty low in priority.
Yep. And Jeff Brown asked, have you considered an all-electric galley so there would be minimal propane on the boat? Is your refrigeration 115 VAC or 12 VDC? How is your dryer vented on Freedom, seeing as it's an ocean-going vessel? So I guess the electric galley, and I wonder if you watched The Winds, because we recently watched their episode where they talked about all of their electric appliances, and the thought did cross my mind. I'm like, maybe that's an idea.
Yeah, it seems like the biggest benefits to maybe all electric is just not in different parts of the world not having to worry about filling up propane. However, I like cooking on propane. I like using the grill, and I like using gas burners on the stove. So I guess don't really have a preference. I don't know if you do electric over propane.
I love the propane because it's like the one thing when I use the oven, I don't have to think about amps. Like if Sean's not around, I just know I can use it, and something is not gonna happen to the boat, because we still have issues sometimes where I might be working the microwave and then there's wash going and then the hot water heater goes on and boom, like we blow a breaker. And for me, I just love knowing that it's propane and it's not connected to anything else. So
and that's nice at anchor. We don't have to start up the generator every time we want to turn on the stove or use the oven. So I think there's pros and cons to both. We enjoy having propane on the boat.
Yeah. So then, is your refrigeration 115?
All of our refrigeration and our chest freezer is 115 volts. So we have an inverter on the boat that's always generating AC power, even when we're not plugged into shore. So we don't have the dual voltage style fridges that switch over to 12 volt. They're all Sub-Zero brand fridges, and then our chest freezer's a GE, so it's kind of constructed like a household fridge.
Yeah. And then how is the dryer vented on Freedom?
Yeah, we have a vented dryer. They do make non-vented dryers, so if people are considering putting washer and dryer on their boat, but they can't figure out maybe how to duct the dryer, there is options for ventless. I don't think they dry as quickly, but we simply on the port side of our pilot house, where the Portuguese bridge walk around is, there's just a 3-inch duct that comes right out the side of the boat, and there's just a little plastic cover that kind of covers where the hole is, so rainwater can't get back into it, but that's how the dryer's vented.
Is your coffee still nice and hot?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to our last bit of questions. Emily and David from Pennsylvania. What are your three favorite meals to make on the boat? So, in a way, this is a hard question because we are the types of people that when we find something that we like, we eat it all the time, especially me. But lately, I feel like in the last year, we've eaten the same 5 meals all the time. But they're really good. So I think, though, my favorite, our Solaire grill, which we've talked about a little bit before, it does something magical to veggies. It grills like a mean vegetable. So I love just a bunch of grilled vegetables on the grill. I make a tahini sauce, and that to me is a really good meal. But also, I would say scallops. For Easter last year, we did scallops with butternut squash puree, which is one of our favorites. And we haven't grilled scallops yet. We did that just on the oven, and it turned out amazing. And I love Sean's chicken sausage pasta with lots of grilled veggies.
Yeah.
And what about you?
I think in the colder months, we've started making some more comfort type food. So the deep dish pizza that you guys have seen in a couple of videos has been really good. Chili we both enjoy, chicken tortilla soup, and then I also like to use the barbecue as much as possible. And probably my favorite thing to make on there is a mean ribeye steak.
If you guys are interested in seeing more cooking videos, let us know. We'll gladly do that.
Yeah.
And in our upcoming trips, I plan to do a lot more pre-planning of meals and pre-cooking of meals, especially like chili. I'm gonna make like a month's worth of chili and a month's worth of certain things and freeze it just so we don't have to think about that, because the summer was a little bit of a disaster in the eating while underway department. Steve C. from Harmon, Illinois. How far south have you guys been in Puget Sound? Sean's been to Olympia with a buddy of his, and as far south as we've both been, it's about Oro Bay on Anderson Island. Jeremy from Sacramento, California. How is the insurance if I've only owned pontoon boats? Would I need to hire you as a captain to babysit me?
No, but
He is for hire, though.
I think on a 40-foot boat, you'll probably won't have an issue finding an insurance company that would insure you. There might be some restrictions initially, whether it's different cruising area or your rates might be a little bit higher till you get more experience. But I think until you get into larger boats, maybe over 60 feet, then they might flat out deny you and require a captain to give you some more formal training. But I don't think it's unreasonable for anyone purchasing a 40-foot boat, whether they have experience on a pontoon boat or maybe even no experience at all. I think you'll find someone that'll insure you. Or just maybe some, I don't know, I guess restrictions until you get some more experience. But
Yeah, or maybe more expensive.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Andre Fernandez. Oh, from Cancun. Man. Are you really from Cancun?
Sounds like a nice place to be right now.
Oh, we love Cancun. Anyway, how is it and how do you resolve the issue of dizziness when you live on a boat? If you're just talking about pure dizziness, like being at a dock and kind of just being on something that's in the water, we never feel it. You literally, like, maybe it's the type of boat we have, but the boat is like a tank, it doesn't move, so I never feel dizzy. If you're referring to seasickness, we don't have a really bad seasickness problem unless we're in some really big seas for a long time. And if I think it's because I drink so much coffee. So if you drink a lot of caffeine and you're in big seas, you can get issues. But it's usually short-lived. I find once you just throw up, you're fine. So,
So just puke. And
just puke.
Dizziness goes away.
Yeah, and if you're at the dock, there is no dizziness. Mark from Devon, England. How much fuel do you keep aboard your dinghy and where do you stow it?
The gas can for the dinghy that stays with the dinghy, I believe, is 3 gallons. And then to supplement that, we have an additional 5-gallon jerry can. So that 5-gallon jerry can just stays in the dinghy while the dinghy's up on the boat. And then when the dinghy comes off and we take excursions with the dinghy, we just leave that 5-gallon jerry can behind. We just usually leave it up on the boat deck. And that's kind of our extra or spare fuel.
Okay, second to the last question. Scott and Dolores from Milwaukee. And Dolores was Sandy's old vet. So, hi guys.
Hey,
We've
guys.
missed you guys. What's the difference in sea conditions between Lake Michigan and the Pacific Ocean for a go, no-go decision? I would start out by saying, though, in general, there's no comparison between the sea conditions. The Pacific Ocean is a cakewalk compared to Lake Michigan.
Yeah, the protected waters anyways. Puget Sound, where we do 90% of our boating.
I'm even talking about on the coast.
Yeah.
Lake Michigan's been where we've had our worst seas ever, so to date. But no go, no go.
Yeah, I mean the process of planning is the same, right? You watch the weather, look at sail flow for winds, maybe check different marine forecasts to try to gauge what the wave height or swell may be. That's maybe one difference. Is in the ocean you'll have a swell, and then you'll also have a wind wave on top of it, and the wind wave is more, I guess, what you're used to seeing on Lake Michigan. So the swell is something that's maybe generated from weather patterns that are several hundred miles or thousands of miles offshore, and then the wind waves are something that's more locally produced on top of the waves. So that's a little bit different, but I would say in Milwaukee the weather patterns in the summer change much more rapidly, and you kind of got to keep an eagle eye on what the situation is, where here I think you can plan and things are a little bit more predictable. So in some regards I think summer boating is easier, much easier here in the Pacific Northwest than it was back in Milwaukee, where there's probably the most challenge and where you got to watch out the most out here is winter. So if you plan to do a lot of winter boating, more weather systems come through and there's more frequently high winds.
Yeah, and also just it's so much more enjoyable out here because we had to cancel. If we had 2 weeks off in the summer, there were some times where we actually couldn't go anywhere. We would be stuck at the dock, and because we couldn't move our vacation, we would be out of luck because the weather was so unpredictable, and you had such short windows of time to actually get places. Because the lake would be a beast and we had smaller boats. So out here, you really can plan a vacation and you're almost 99% going to be sure you're going to be able to leave. If time's an issue, being out here, you can do a whole lot more cruising and not be so tied down because of the weather.
Yeah, here you're 95% chance you'll be able to just follow your itinerary. You plan out 2 weeks worth of ports you want to stop at, and the weather's likely not going to interrupt it. Where Milwaukee, it was you go where the lake allowed you to go.
Yeah.
And sometimes you completely changed where you're going to cruise because you weren't able to change your vacation.
Yeah.
So you thought you were going to go north, but the only way you could go is south. Things like that.
Okay, final question from Mark Jernigan. I hope I said that right. From Fairhope, Alabama. What is the best thing about living on your boat? What is your least favorite thing? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think the best thing is we feel like we're on vacation all the time. At least I do. The boat's an enjoyable place to live. Love the views. Love the living on a dock, and just love boats in general.
That's how we get along so well.
Yeah.
We're on vacation all the time. Just kidding.
Least favorite thing is I would say the boat is like a much more, I don't know what the word is, a much more fragile environment than maybe living on land. First of all, everything's a little bit tighter, so when you walk around it's easy to kind of bang into things, and when you bang into stuff on a boat, you'll notice that the boat's interior is beautiful, it's all woodwork, but woodwork is really hard to fix if you scuff it up. It's not like your house. If you run into the wall, you can just put a little drywall mud on and give it a fresh coat of paint. So I think just the fragile nature of the boat and always kind of needing to be careful, and if you screw something up, it being very time consuming and expensive to fix would be the least favorite thing for me.
Yeah. And if you guys have noticed, that's why we don't wear our wedding rings. We just wear silicone wedding bands. We have a no jewelry policy on the boat because literally the minute I put on a piece of jewelry or my wedding ring, I ding something. Like I knock the leather, and I usually feel like I never touch the ultra leather, or I find myself walking into a wall with my hand for some reason. So everything's just delicate.
Yeah.
So I would say for me, similar to what Sean said, that it feels like we're on vacation all the time. It does, and I love being on the water. I love the wildlife that we see all the time. I love just being so close to everything that makes us happy, where we don't have to go home anymore because we are home. And I would say the least favorite thing is it's just everything's harder. For me, I'm not a technical person, so always having to watch our power consumption and our amps and all that type of stuff. Back to the propane question with our oven, I love knowing that I don't have to worry about that. So I think some of those things that just make it a little harder way of living, but easy doesn't make you strong, so getting smarter every day. What are our cruising plans? We get it. Everyone's been wondering, what are we doing in 2021? And we are wondering what we are doing in 2021 as well. But what is plan A?
Plan A, if the borders open up, which I think everybody in Washington is waiting for, and if they do, I'm a little bit worried that like Canada's going to be packed because everyone's going to be headed there. Mass exodus from Washington. But if the borders open up, we want to do another circumnavigation of Vancouver Island. We haven't done one in this boat. It was with our Sea Ray when we last circumnavigated the island, but we want to get to the northern parts of the island on the inside, like the Broughtons, and then also just get back to the west coast of Vancouver Island out on the Pacific, and go into all the different sort of sounds that are on that side of the water.
Yeah, we had a pretty epic trip planned in 2020 that got scrapped, obviously. So we want to be able to get one more summer in BC before possibly leaving the area. We're hearing that they still might have a very strict quarantine policy for 14 days in a Canadian approved hotel, which that wouldn't work for us. So if that stays true, plan B is going down the coast to the San Francisco Bay Area, early fall to about early summer of 2021, and then coming back up here and heading farther north. There's also
and we probably wouldn't limit ourselves to the bay. I think we would jaunt further south along the California coast through the winter.
Yeah.
Work our way down to San Diego and then come back up.
Plan C is do nothing, which probably isn't going to happen. And then we do have a plan D, which we can't share much about right now, but if plan D actually does come to fruition, you will certainly know about it.
What about plan E?
Plan E? Plan E is
we do none of plans A through D.
Yeah. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today for our Q&A session and all of our plans, and wish us luck for 2021. There's a whole lot going on, a lot in the works. It's going to be a busy year. It's going to be a fun year, and we look forward to sharing more of it with you guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you on the next one.
We'll see you soon.
Cheers.